7th December, 1941 was the final day before the world map would change forever. A disaster was about to strike a naval base, one that no one had foreseen. On that day, an African-American girl named Taurus Miller, who worked aboard a battleship, began her usual morning routine by serving breakfast to Navy officers as the sun rose. Afterward, she moved on to collect their laundry. At the same time, a tour operator stationed on the 757 heard a siren, one that no service member ever wants to hear. He rushed outside, only to be stunned by the sight of the sky filled with Japanese bomber aircraft. In the blink of an eye, it felt as though doomsday had arrived. The Japanese bombers began destroying American ships one after another. This surprise attack took place at Pearl Harbor, and today, we'll uncover why Japan dared to strike a superpower like America. We'll also explore why a cook named Dar Smarik was awarded America's highest honors and what led the US to respond with nuclear weapons. Our gripping story begins in 1941, during World War II, when America risked everything to support China. Yes, the same China that America strongly opposes today in 2023. By this point, the war had been raging for 3 years. On one side stood Germany and Italy, while on the other were Britain, the Netherlands, and France. America had remained completely neutral, choosing to avoid involvement due to the massive losses it faced in World War I. But one nation, Japan, was repeatedly provoking the US. Japan, lacking natural resources, began aggressively occupying nearby territories to meet its growing demands. It had already taken over large parts of Korea, Taiwan, and China. In the Pacific Ocean, it now had its eyes on the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. But here lay the problem. Malaysia was a British colony, Indonesia belonged to the Netherlands, and the Philippines was a colony of neutral America. These colonial powers were displeased with Japan's expansionist actions, especially since Hitler backed Japan, and Hitler was the enemy of both Britain and America. In July 1941, in response to Japan's aggression, America cut off oil supplies to Japan. This was a major blow, as Japan depended on the US for 80% of its oil imports. America laid down a condition. Japan had to withdraw from China in order for the oil supply to resume. This was a tough call for Japan. On one hand, retreating from China would look like a surrender, especially with Hitler's backing. On the other, without oil, Japan would weaken rapidly. Japan made its decision. It refused to withdraw from China. Instead, it devised a secret plan to invade Indonesia for its oil. But to get there, Japan first needed to capture the Philippines, which meant taking on America. Japan knew that any attack on the Philippines would be countered from the nearby Pearl Harbor base. Yet, with oil reserves running low, Japan had no other option but to strike, but not the Philippines. Pearl Harbor itself. Japanese military leaders decided on a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, aiming to cripple America's Pacific Fleet. Preparations began in secret. Japan assembled a massive fleet: 2 battleships, 39 submarines, 30 destroyers, and 414 bomber aircraft, which were launched from 6 aircraft carriers. On the American side, Pearl Harbor had 8 battleships, 59 anti-aircraft ships, and 390 aircraft. On paper, the US had enough power to defend itself, but only if it had prior knowledge of the attack. To maintain the element of surprise, Japan imposed strict radio silence. Its fleet, having traveled 8,000 kilometers, was now just 370 kilometers from Pearl Harbor. The moment arrived. On 7th December 1941, 350 Japanese aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor in 2 waves. Completely unprepared, the Americans were caught in chaos. The first wave opened fire for 45 minutes, devastating the base. Just as people began to think the worst was over, 10 minutes later, a second wave struck with even more intensity. The assault lasted 1 hour and 15 minutes, destroying 20 vessels, 8 battleships, and over 300 American aircraft. The sky turned into fire and the sea into smoke. Among the brave individuals on that fateful day was African-American cook Dar Smarik, who, as mentioned earlier, was on board one of the ships. While collecting laundry, Taurus heard the terrifying siren. By the time she stepped out, a Japanese torpedo had struck her ship, injuring many officers, including the captain. With no hesitation, Dar Smarik rushed the injured to safety. Then, without any formal training, she manned an anti-aircraft machine gun and shot down 6 Japanese planes. For this incredible bravery, Dar Smarik became the first African-American to receive the Navy Cross, America's second highest military honor after the Medal of Honor. Though the Japanese aircraft eventually withdrew, America had now entered World War II, a war it had previously avoided. The very next day, the United States declared war on Japan. For the next 3 months, America focused on rebuilding its naval base. Fortunately, many of the damaged ships were in shallow waters, making them easier to recover. Then came April 1942. America struck back, bombing Tokyo in a surprise air raid, the first deadly American attack in World War II. But the retaliation didn't end there. Over the next 4 years, America dominated the Pacific War. Japan grew weaker, but continued to resist fiercely. Finally, in August 1945, the US played its final final and most devastating card. On 6 August 1945 at 8 a.m., an American Boeing B-29 Superfortress flew over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. It dropped a 4,400-kilogram bomb nicknamed Little Boy. Just 43 seconds later, the bomb exploded, releasing a blinding flash. A massive fireball rose from the earth, increasing the ground temperature to 5,000 degrees Celsius. It was the first nuclear attack in human history. Japan's military leadership was in shock, but before they could react, on 9th August, the US dropped a second nuclear bomb, this time on Nagasaki. That bomb was a Mark III, codenamed Fat Man, weighing 4,670 kilograms. It completely flattened the city. These were the only two nuclear bombs ever used in warfare, and they left scars that still haunt history.